Welcome back to MEC Live. My name is Brant,
And this is Tammy.
and we're here to talk to you about biodiesel today. So, in our last podcast, I want to thank David Albrecht, our Kansas City Clean Cities co-coordinator, for jumping in and filling in for the propane podcast. He was excellent, but we have Tammy here today, and we are excited to talk about biodiesel. Recently, as in last week, which was the weekend of the 17th of January, there was a biodiesel conference in Las Vegas, and our own Tammy was able to go to it. Tammy, what did you find out at the biodiesel conference?
Oh wow, got to go to Vegas. So that was cool. I hadn't been there in a long time. But the National Biodiesel Board, which is kind of the information organization for biodiesel, has changed their name to Clean Fuels Alliance America. They got a new website, cleanfuels.org. And the reason they did that is because biodiesel use has grown, and the types of renewable fuels that they're dealing with that are similar to biodiesel now, it includes biodiesel, renewable diesel, sustainable aviation fuel, fuel oil, renewable fuel oil, like is used in for heating in the northeast part of the U.S., and then also marine fuel. So there's a lot of renewable fuels now that they're dealing with as part of the National Biodiesel Board. They're made from a lot of the same feedstocks, and so new name change to kind of represent all the fuel work that they're doing and all the clean fuels that they support.
Well, that's awesome. That is awesome. Well, let's get right to it. Is there anything else that you have for the biodiesel conference that you want to mention?
Well, I'm sure I will bring up parts of it as we're going through this discussion here. A lot of changes, a lot of improvements that are coming down the pike. The big thing, they were celebrating the 30th anniversary of Biodiesel Board, and so that's awesome. So we've got 30 years of fuel experience under their belts, and just felt like a good time for a name change and an expansion of all the work they're doing.
All right. All right. Well, let's get right to it then. So biodiesel, what is it?
Well, biodiesel is a liquid fuel that's very similar to petroleum diesel. It can be used in most petroleum diesel engines. What's different though is that it's made from renewable sources. Um, so it can be used in up to 100% biodiesel in an engine. Most commonly, it's used at about a B20 or a 20% biodiesel blend, and it's blended with petroleum diesel or renewable diesel. And most engines can use it at that 20% rate. It can come as low as 5% biodiesel in a blend, and that's typically just straight diesel. It can have up to 5% biodiesel in it, and it's just labeled as diesel. But they use the biodiesel. It helps with the lubricity of the fuel, which is uh, just makes the engine parts run smoother and cleaner.
Gotcha. For our listeners, can you kind of explain what they would see at a gas pump or at a fuel pump if they saw biodiesel available?
Yeah, sure. There's going to be a label on the pump that tells you what the fuel content is. So as I said, if it's 5% biodiesel or less, it's just going to be labeled straight diesel. A 20% biodiesel blend is going to have anywhere from 6% to 20% biodiesel in it. They can have higher blends. They'd be labeled as a B30, which would be like the 21 to 30%, B50, etc. And so you just look for that label like you would for your octane label on your fuel, and it'll tell you what the content of the biodiesel is in the fuel that you're using.
Gotcha. So just like you would see for ethanol, you might see an E85, you're going to see something similar with a B20 at a gas station.
Correct.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Do you want to go in the history behind biodiesel? You were talking about how the National Biodiesel Board, which is now the Clean Fuels Alliance America, has been around for over 30 or for 30 years now. What started the biodiesel revolution?
Well, it started actually that a lot of soybeans are used to make animal feed. But when they make that animal feed, they don't use the entire part of the bean. The oil is separated out from that, and they use the meal to feed livestock for chickens, pigs, beef, etc. All the various livestock that we eat as meats. And so they had this excess oil that was coming from it. Of course, some of the oil is used in cosmetics, it's used in food production and various processes out there. But there was more oil being generated from this feed production than they could actually use. So some scientists are like, oil, we make fuel. And they looked at using the vegetable oils to make fuel. And that's how biodiesel was born.
So biodiesel was born from the vegetable oil, which we know as soybeans. Can you talk about how we sometimes hear about vegetable oil from restaurants? And we hear that you can run straight on, or you can run straight from from the fats from the oil from restaurants.
Yeah, that was a common theme probably in the early 2000s. People talked about, running their diesel engines on French fry grease. It was a joke, and that, they'd run down the street and they would smell like French fries. There are some people that have done that I would not advise that, but I do want to clarify that is not biodiesel. Biodiesel is basically, they are taking these various vegetable oils and animal fats. They can use soybean oil, they can use corn oil, they can use canola oil. I mean, like any kinds of oils out there they can use. They use recycled cooking oil. They use the restaurant grease from, restaurants. So, you might get your French fry oil, but they take that oil, they take those fats, and they process them similar to how you would process crude oil out of the ground into diesel fuel. It's a little bit different process, obviously, but it still is processed and refined. And they turn these vegetable oils and animal fats into biodiesel.
Gotcha. So another type of biodiesel that is quite buzzworthy at this point is renewable diesel. I've heard a lot of talk about it. Can you go into the differences between biodiesel and renewable diesel?
So renewable diesel, yeah, it's getting a lot of press recently, and it's made from basically all the same feedstocks that biodiesel is made from. It's just a little bit of a different way of processing it. And so the renewable diesel, once it's processed, it is chemically identical to petroleum diesel, like so much the same that you actually would have to, if you didn't know if you were looking at petroleum diesel or renewable diesel, you'd have to use carbon dating to tell, okay, is this from, fossil diesel, or is this from, renewable fats and oils, etc. And so renewable diesel is getting a lot of interest, especially on the coasts. And it's not as available here in the Midwest, although that will be changing soon. There's a refinery in Hugoton, Kansas, here that's going to be, they're retooling the refinery, and it's going to be producing renewable diesel. I'm not sure yet when that's going to open, but I imagine in the next year or so. And so that will probably really help to increase the availability of renewable diesel in our area. You can, because renewable diesel is, as I said, chemically identical to petroleum diesel, you can blend it with biodiesel. Matter of fact, like a really optimum blend is you put about 20 to 30% biodiesel in there and 70 to 80% renewable diesel in there, and you get excellent lubricity, you get excellent cold running properties with that. And so that's a really good blend. And then you would be running on a completely renewable fuel, because you'd have the renewable biodiesel, the renewable diesel, 100% renewable fuel.
That is awesome. The Hugoton, Kansas facility sounds really great to, just the general availability in the Midwest. I haven't heard of that, so that's really cool.
Yeah, we're really excited about that. So
yeah. All right. So biodiesel, where does it stand in the US?
It's part of one of the fuels that's included under the Renewable Fuel Standard, or the RFS. So the EPA, they require a certain amount of renewable fuels to be blended into the fuel supply. Biodiesel is one of those renewable fuels, as is ethanol, renewable diesel, etc. So there's a requirement that so many gallons of renewable fuel have to be used each year. And so that is just part of the work that EPA is doing to help make our fuel cleaner and, limit pollution and carbon and all of that that comes from all of the transportation work that has to be done around the country.
Let's talk about the manufacturer warranties. So there's plenty of people that I've heard that are concerned about putting biodiesel into their vehicles. Doesn't matter if it's a light, medium, or heavy duty. They are apprehensive about putting something new into their engine. Can you go into a bit about what the manufacturers have said about biodiesel?
Oh, yeah, certainly. Well, for one, biodiesel is not new. As I said, it's been around for about 30 years. So even though that it seems new and maybe people hadn't heard of it before, it's not new. It's gone through a lot of research and testing, and it's required to meet fuel standards just like fossil fuels are required to meet. They have the ASTM standards, and I won't get heavily into that, but there are regulations and quality standards that have to be met in order for a fuel to be called biodiesel. So one, as long as you're purchasing fuel that meets those standards, and anything that would be available at a retail pump is going to be meeting those standards. So as long as you're purchasing a fuel that meets those standards, you don't have to worry that you're getting a substandard product. Most of the engine manufacturers around that are available here in the U.S., they will support a B20 blend of biodiesel. And that's there's a handful of specific engines from specific manufacturers that maybe aren't going to be listed under that, but you can find all that information. National Biodiesel Board, if you go to their website, which is biodiesel.org, I believe is the website. But they have an OEM statement.
You mean they should be going to the cleanfuels.org?
They will be going to that, but right now it's still on biodiesel.org.
All right. Just want to make sure that we're all on the same page.
Yeah. They haven't gotten everything moved over from the biodiesel website to the Clean Fuels website, but it is coming. You could probably still access it from cleanfuels.org. Down at the bottom, you could find that chart. But they will have an OEM summary that lists all the various engine manufacturers and what blends of biodiesel that they cover under their warranties. I will start with all the OEMs except the use of B5. A 5% biodiesel blend is, as I said, it's straight. It can be just labeled as straight diesel. They don't have to tell you that there's 5% biodiesel in it, or 2%, or 3%, or what have you. But all of the engines will use that. And I said most of them will do B20 blends, and there are some equipment. There's some equipment modifications that can be done, and you can run a 100% biodiesel blend through your engine.
Oh, how would you do that?
So that is a system, not to sound like an advertisement here, but Optimus Technologies, they make a system where you can run. It's got a divided tank where you have a small tank with a little bit of either a B20 or lower blend of petroleum and biodiesel, and then your other tank would be a B100. And so you would start up on that lower biodiesel blend, then you'd run the B100 through the engine until while you're operating, and then when you shut down, it's going to run a little bit of that blended fuel through your system, so that you don't have to worry about issues with cold start, because that is one of the issues that can happen if you get a B100, is that there can be issues in extreme cold with having that in your system. One of those myths out there is that you can't run it. That's not entirely true, but anyway.
Gotcha. So we've talked about kind of renewable diesel and its lack of availability, especially here in the Midwest. Let's talk about biodiesel. Where can you find it anywhere in the Midwest, or is it still out on the coast as well?
It's out on the coast, yes, especially California and the Pacific Northwest. They've got their low carbon fuel standards, so That's where almost all the renewable diesel is going, and a large percentage of biodiesel is going out there because they have additional incentives for using the fuel, and so it makes the fuel a lot. It's a lot of credits that you can get as a producer of those renewable fuels. They get credit for the fuels being low carbon. So, however, biodiesel is widely available here in the U.S., especially in the Midwest. You can go to the AFDC website, which is afdc.energy.gov, and we have a alternative fuel station locator on there, and you can click there and you can enter the fuel you're interested in. For this instance, it would be biodiesel, and you can find locations on that website. They happen to be red dots, locations around the Midwest where it's available. We're lucky here in Kansas. If you're driving on I-70, there's great availability along I-70 of biodiesel. Minnesota has really good availability. They actually have a minimum biodiesel content that's required in their fuel, and it varies by the time of year. Iowa has good availability, Illinois, Arkansas, but so there's lots of areas around here in the Midwest where you can really get good access to biodiesel.
And just to be clear for our audience, you will not see on the station locator anything that is B5 or below, because that is already considered diesel and it's not on the locator itself.
Right, that's correct. And actually, if you have, like, say, I know there's a national chain of fuel retailers that commonly carries about a B10 to a B15 blend. They are not shown on the locator because the locator really only shows if you sell a B20 blend or above. If you sell a B20 blend for part of the year, and then you can be listed on the locator. So there are stations that might be carrying a B10, B12, etc., that you can find, and then you can get the benefits of biodiesel, which is, that increased lubricity, the more renewable fuel, the emissions reductions, carbon reductions, etc. And so just look for it on your pump.
Gotcha. So much like in the Midwest, you may see an E10 where it is labeled as gasoline, but it actually may have E10 in it. Your diesel may have B5 in it, and you may not know about it.
Oh, right. Yeah. They have to regular diesel, ultra low sulfur diesel, ULSD is what it's called, has this problem with lubricity, which means it's not, greasy enough to get all the engine parts to operate properly. And so they have to add some sort of additive to the ultra low sulfur diesel in order to make it run in engines. Frequently, they'll put in some biodiesel because biodiesel has increased lubricity and really, helps those components work well together, and reduce the wear and tear on the engines when you add that lubricity. And so there's other additives that they can put in there. It doesn't have to be biodiesel, but they don't require that you label it if it's the 5% content or less.
Gotcha. And just a fun fact for everybody who's listening, even the amount of B2, so if you just have 2% of biodiesel as your diesel blend, that will be enough lubricity to overcome any of the problems of ULSD. So just keep that in mind, that it's 2%, and they've also seen significant improvements with even just 1%. So biodiesel does definitely have its advantages. Let's talk about more advantages of biodiesel. What are the benefits of biodiesel? Why are we pushing biodiesel in the first place?
So one of the biggest benefits of biodiesel and why, it's great to switch from petroleum diesel to biodiesel is that, one, it's a renewable fuel, and secondly, it's about a 70% reduction in emissions and in carbon if you're running a B100 blend versus a petroleum-based diesel. So, we all know that climate change is a big issue. We've got to deal with reducing that carbon, reducing those greenhouse gases. Biodiesel is an excellent option for that. Matter of fact, there are places in the U.S. where if you're electricity is heavy percentage of coal production or even all coal production, your biodiesel truck is going to be cleaner than your electric vehicle. So
Wow.
that's amazing. I know. Can you believe that? But I mean,
No.
yeah, that's crazy. The other benefit of biodiesel, one, it's renewable. So we don't have to worry that we're gonna, someday we're gonna run out of petroleum. You know, the feedstocks that are used to make biodiesel and renewable diesel, they're grown every year. So it's renewable. We're gonna keep having what we need in order to make that fuel. It's domestic fuel. It's grown here in the U.S., so it supports small rural economies. It's manufactured here in the U.S., so it supports jobs around the country. There's over 60,000 jobs that are related in the biodiesel industry, and over 12 billion in the U.S. economy from biodiesel. So there's a lot of really great benefits to using biodiesel. The greenhouse gases, the local benefits to the economy, local fuel. We don't have to import the feedstocks for this.
Awesome, awesome. And Tammy, I just wanted to touch upon something real quick. If there was a spill of biodiesel on the road where a tanker was taking a bunch of biodiesel to a fueling station, would you be worried about it at all if you saw it?
Well, I mean, it's slippery. It's a mess. I mean, you got to clean it up, but it's going to be non-toxic. I mean, it's not like when you've spilled a tanker truck on the edge of the road that's filled with a fossil diesel. There's, you're not going to have all the toxicity that is in a petroleum diesel with your biodiesel. It's, you clean up the mess and then you're done. I mean, there's not like you have to do a lot of remediation with, removing the soil and getting the toxins, and it's not like that. So
yeah, so it's safe. I mean, it's safe if you see it around, and you may not always have that when you're talking about other liquid fuels.
Right.
All right, Tammy, here's a time where I want to go over any myths that you know about biodiesel that you would like to just nip in the bud.
Oh, I think the funniest one is that people think that biodiesel is straight vegetable oil. And so that cracks me up. No, you can't just take that French fry grease and put it in your engine and run it. As I said, people have done it, so that proves it can be done, but I would not recommend it. And that is definitely not what biodiesel is. It still has to go through the refining, the production that you have to go through to get a quality fuel. So there's that. The other myth is that it's not regulated, that it's, and a lot of that comes from some of those early days, some of those early understandings where people were thinking, oh, just run vegetable oil. Biodiesel has to go through the same kinds of standards as other fuels have to be considered as part of our economy here in the US. I mean, there's regulations with regard to that. Probably the other common myth is that it doesn't work in the cold. That's not true. All diesel fuels have issues, especially if you're talking about number 2 diesel, ultra low sulfur diesel, number 2 diesel. You have to have additives to make them work in the extreme cold. And so you can put additives in your biodiesel blends, and you can run those in the cold. I mean, Minnesota, that state borders up against Canada, and they have a minimum biodiesel content that they require in their fuel year round. So that tells you can run biodiesel in the cold.
Yeah.
I think probably the biggest, well, not the biggest, another one of the myths that I hear a lot is that they're swapping out food for fuel. That's not really the case with biodiesel. Because as I said in the beginning of the podcast, they started with figuring out how to make biodiesel because they needed a solution for what to do with all the excess vegetable oil that was coming from all the meal that they were making for the livestock feed. And so as demand for livestock feed for meat has grown, so has demand for biodiesel fuel. And so those feedstocks have kind of, grown in tandem. So it is not displacing food. It's actually using the co-products from food production to make fuel. So, that's another great benefit of biodiesel, which, helps its sustainability.
Yeah, definitely. No, I appreciate you going over that because there are a lot of myths about all these alternative fuels that people have conjured up over the course of the years, and it is our job to kind of dispel some of those in order to make people understand what they're actually using in their fuel tanks. So thank you very
Yeah.
much, Sammy. That's awesome.
Yeah. And I definitely, if there's a myth out there that you've heard or a question, drop it in our chat and we'll try and see if we can find you an answer if we don't know it ourselves.
Yep, definitely. Yep, we will use our resources in order to find the answer to your question because that's kind of what we're all about. We want the truth. We'll be as factual as we can be, and we're not here to necessarily promote any specific fuel. We are here to promote alternative fuels in general because again, we don't really want petroleum and diesel on our roads, and these are the alternatives, and they're pretty good ones to put in your tank whenever you need to get from one place to the other.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we can't just shut down society and say, okay, no more cars, no more trucks, no more vehicles. That can't happen. And so we have to be able to continue and move the goods that we need in our society, move people around, et cetera. And biodiesel is one of these really great options that, it goes right into the infrastructure that we have right now. So you can take it to the fueling stations, which is what everybody's familiar with. You can put it in the fueling tanks and use it just in the same way that people have been using fuel for over 100 years. And it's cleaner. It's way cleaner than the petroleum diesel. And it's a really excellent option, especially in that heavy duty market where it's really been tough to find electric options. I know, people are really excited about electricity and how it can transform transportation. And I think, we may get there someday with heavy duty, but we're just not quite there yet. And so this is a great option for some of those heavy duty sectors that they haven't been able to figure out an electric solution for.
So let's touch on that and let's go a step farther. Let's say that we have convinced you that biodiesel is the way to go. If you were a fleet or even if you were just a passenger user, what would I need to do in order to consider biodiesel? Like what do I need to think about before I actually make this transition?
Well, first of all, you want to, figure out where you can find it. Like, is it available near you? Are you going to be able to use it in the vehicle that you have? As I said, most of the diesel engines out there can use a B20 blend. That's primarily B20 and lower blends are primarily what's going to be available in fueling locations around the country. So, find your fuel, make sure your engine's going to work with it. If not, or maybe you need a new vehicle or a new engine, get with us. There's grant funding out there that can help you, purchase a new vehicle if you need to, or put a fuel system on. If you really want to go all in and go with that B100 and go completely renewable, there's funding out there that can help you put that conversion on your vehicles and go to a B100. We can help you out with getting some funding for there's funding availability out there. If you're a fuel retailer and you want to start having biodiesel blend available at your fueling location, we can help you with grant funding with that. And so, there's a lot of options out there. But first of all, I would start with, can you get it near where you are? And, can your current vehicle use it, and at what blend rate?
All right. And so my final question to you, Tammy, is You've dealt with biodiesel quite a bit in your life. Can you give me one experience that you've had with biodiesel in the state of Kansas or in the state of Missouri, that really showcases what biodiesel can do?
Um, I think that some of the biggest things that I think are amazing are the just the fact that, as I said, you can just use biodiesel in a diesel engine. And so it makes it a really easy way to just, without having to have a lot of expense on your own part, just change your fuel. You don't have to change your entire life. You don't have to change how you're doing your vehicle. Change your fuel and you can make your vehicle cleaner. Here in Kansas, as I said, we've got great availability. If you live near I-70 and travel I-70 frequently, there's great availability of biodiesel along I-70, and we've got a nice biodiesel corridor along I-70. There's several retailers along there that have it available, and so that I think is one of the best things in the time I've been working in this sector of things that's happened with biodiesel within the state of Kansas. The other thing would be that B100 system that that they can put on the trucks. There's a lot of heavy duty work trucks, snow plows, and dump trucks, and those trucks that are necessary to keep life moving within cities. And a lot of those are moving to the B100 system. There's some cities in Kansas that are moving to that. Up in Iowa, there's some cities that are moving to that. And so I think that is really a phenomenal way to really go all in on biodiesel. I mean, they're just, going straight with that B100 and working with that. And, I've heard a lot of really good things about it. And the people that are using it seem to be really happy. And so, it's amazing. There was a study done mid last year, I think it was, about some of the amazing things that happen when you move to a B100 system. Reduces cancer risks because you're reducing that pollution. Reduces premature death again because you're reducing all that pollution from diesel engines. It's just really great for the economy. It's great for America. It's great for the world, reducing greenhouse gases, etc.
So it kind of sounds, just based off your experience, is the simplicity to convert from a diesel engine to a biodiesel engine. We've already got the infrastructure for it. We've already got blends all around Kansas and some in Missouri, but all around the Midwest. And it's as simple as just seeking it out and finding it and making that conversion. And honestly, you don't have to buy anything new if you want to get the the B100. You have to outfit the engine, but you don't have to buy a brand new vehicle to run biodiesel. You can just do it right away.
Yeah, and that's the really awesome thing about it. I know there's a lot of people out there, especially in our rural communities. They're interested in working with cleaner fuels, but maybe they don't have the infrastructure that's necessary to move to compressed natural gas or to another alternative fuel. But biodiesel, there are a lot of fuel retailers around the state that have it available at various blends. If you're a fleet that's running it, you can talk with your fuel supplier. If you have your supplier brings in fuel to your location, you can talk with them about getting a blended biodiesel and starting with that, and upping your blend a little bit at a time. And if like I said, if you really want to go in, you can get with us and we can see about getting you some different vehicles if you need to. Through your regular process of replacing vehicles, we can replace some of those vehicles with ones that'll burn higher biodiesel blends, or even a B100 or something like that.
That's excellent. Well, Tammy, thank you very much for your recap on biodiesel. That was excellent. We appreciate We appreciate the update from the National Biodiesel Conference. That's great. And we look forward to next time when we are going to talk about our final alternative fuel, and that will be EVs, probably the most sought out vehicle right now. We talk about buzzwords all the time, EVs and EV infrastructure seems to be the thing to talk about in 2021 and possibly beyond. So join us next time when we talk about electric vehicles. And thank you for listening. As always, if you have any comments or questions, you can leave them in the chat. And if you like what you see or hear, please look to hit that thumbs up button on the video. So thank you very much. And this is MEC Live, and we will see you next time.
See y'all.